I could do that all day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nasty.
Oh,
Yeah, gotta love that, man.
yeah. Cool, man.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Digital Soul Presents. Uh-oh. Look out. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for another edition of Digital Soul Presents. Today, I am very, very honored to have this next gentleman. He actually needs no introduction at all. I'm actually very honored, not only personally too as well, because I'm honored to personally know him and share a good friendship with him. Very down to earth brother, but also very multi-talented bassist, producer, artist, composer, arranger. He's a one-man deal, and he's here with a brand new joint coming this week, man. The Resurrection of Funk. We're gonna get into a little bit of that Minneapolis history. My brother on them is now popping. And Andre Cymone is in the house. What's going on, my brother?
How you doing, man? This has been a long time, man. I've been wanting to do this for a minute, so I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience as well, man. Appreciate it. But we gonna dive right on into it, man. We got this new joint coming, man. The Resurrection of Funk, man. It's been a long time coming, and you let off actually a couple of years ago with a lead off single, about 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
so starting off with that, man, with that first single, why the long, the teaser,
You
you wait
know,
what, a couple of years.
life happens. Life is what happens when you're making plans. But we had it all set. My kids went to college, and then my family had put together a thing in Minneapolis where they named the street after my mother. And so that was really important. And I take family really, really, serious. That's more important to me than anything. So, and I had an aunt in Sioux Falls, and she had a birthday, and I had to be there, and so
Yeah,
I had to beat it up to Sioux Falls. So, a lot of things happened, and and I thought because I really wanted to release my album in the summertime, in a specific time in the summertime, just to time it and all that kind of stuff. So, so when things happened, it's like life, it's like I let life guide me. I don't try
yeah.
to force stuff. I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm just gonna do it anyway. I'm like, you know what? There's a reason why this is happening. And it's good that it happened that way because now is the perfect time. Everything seems to be falling into place the way it should. And I'm really happy. I'm really happy with where things are at right now.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Why now? Why is the resurrection of funk important right now? So do answer that. Why is it important right now, this very moment?
Well, for a number of reasons, really. I mean, you know, for one, obviously, the music business is in an interesting place. AI and people think that they're gonna start some sort of synthetic revolution. Not on my watch. Okay. And I know there's a lot of people, Jara and all those guys, man. No. We gotta step up and luckily I've gotten to know George Clinton a little bit, and he's been really kind of, just a good person to just having the atmosphere, him and Bootsy, and I mean, because they never stop making funk. They never stop saying funk. They never stop speaking funk, and putting that energy and that inspiration out there. So so I'm just really kind of following in their footsteps basically, and standing on their shoulders as much as I can. And the fact that obviously coming from Minneapolis, and the fact that obviously part of the whole legacy of the Minneapolis reality. So, all of that is really why. And I think really I want to see funk music, and artists and really creating songs and creating music and creating a whole, you know, um, entity, not picking things from somewhere else and all that. It's, there's, funk was in a self-contained,
Yeah,
product. You know what I mean? And so, I want to get back to that self-contained kind of, spirit of making music. And so that's one of the reasons. And then the other, there's several reasons really. The other reason is, I think there was one or two times where, brothers that, I helped out a lot, and I mean, they'd say, they'd talk about the music and the Minneapolis Sound. I wouldn't mention my name. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, and so I thought, you know what? I realized they're going to keep going like that, and that's fine. That's good for them, and I'm happy for them. I'm proud of them, and all that other kind of stuff. But I'm just not like that. I just, I think, when somebody, helps me out, I appreciate it, and I give them their flowers, and I let people know, and I always assume that it's going to be the same thing. And
Yeah.
I've come to realize throughout the years, it's never been that way, and I'm like, okay, because they know me. They know that Dre is the one. Dre will come back and he will, bust out some stuff, because, just because I can do different things doesn't mean I can't, I can funk with, I know how funk is created because, I was creating it before I met a lot of those guys. So, anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just happy to see everybody doing their thing. But now I'm going to do my thing in a very, very funky way and make a funky statement, and really kind of do what I can do to put funk where it belongs. And that's on top. Because I
Heard
tell
that,
you,
man.
ain't nobody, ain't nobody around that can do it like this. So and I'm gonna prove it. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna have fun. Really, that's really what it's all about. It's about that's
Yeah,
the other
man.
reason I thought people need to really have some fun,
Mhm.
and escape, and really some funky fun where they can just dance and really kind of get back into the joy of life and what it's all about. So yeah,
Yeah. That's what funk's all about, man. Fun with a K, man. Just having
thank
fun
you,
with it. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Speaking of making a statement and having fun, man. We got an alter ego, Boombox Dre, man. Talk a little bit about this brother, man.
Boombox Dre, yeah, he had to invent himself. He was like, he wouldn't be denied. He was like, no, no, Dre, come on, man, come on, we got to come like this. We got to, and he had all kind of ideas. I can't shut him up. Now he's like, he's in bathtubs and
Can't shut
shit.
him up.
He's at the beach. He's like, he's running around here, stepping up to people, asking, what y'all know about funk? And so it's really been interesting to see him, kind of come into his own, because he's an alter ego, but he's a funky alter ego. And his job, he's basically a funk soldier. He's basically on the streets, asking people what they know about funk. And he's got his vibe, and he's like, he's always got his boombox, so he's walking. He's like always playing some funky nobody heard. So when you hear Boombox Dre playing some funk, he's playing something that ain't nobody heard, and it's like it may not even be on the album. It's just some funk. He's just playing something, and every time it's almost funkier than the last time because it's just he's just coming up with. And you're like, wait a minute, what is that? That's some silly funk. It's like, so he's just having. What you know about funk? Fun. So, and then there's another alter ego for the album we call OGDRE, the Funk Forecaster. And he's basically sort of your tour guide for funk, for the music, for the album. So he's guiding you through the funk on the album and letting you know what to expect. You can expect slippery conditions as you travel deep into the heart of the funk. So hold on to your cakes and your snakes as we deliver you to your first funk destination. This has been this is your funk forecaster. So he goes through this whole thing, and he's got a theme song that plays, and he's we're just having fun.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just kind of bringing back the fun and bringing back the funk.
Man, I heard that. I've also I've heard a few of the tracks on the album, and I hear so much
Mm,
going on,
mm,
and very nostalgic,
mhm.
um, retro, but yet just it's like the perfect bridge between what's happening now and what I grew up on, and what's kind of happening with a lot of our underground artists.
Mhm.
Um, and I know, man, 'cause like I said, I've been knowing you for quite a while. I know you've been working on this album a long time. I know it must be about 100 tracks.
Oh,
How,
way more than that.
yes, I know it has to be, because like I said, I know at least 5 or 6 years of me going back and forth with you. You've been talking about this album, this album, this album, and it's finally here. And how do you whittle down to, okay, these are the 30, 20 tracks I'm going to give the people? How do you pick your selections to do this album?
That's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Because, you know, um, I have a few friends around that really kind of help me pick a few things out. And Catherine helps a lot because she's very, she's kind of hardcore when it comes to, funk. And she's like, and I mean, you'd think, because I'm a bass player, you'd think I'd be, you know, it'd be all about the bass.
Yeah.
She's like, you got to turn that bass up. You're a bass player. She'll remind me, I'm like, I know I'm a bass player, but then how come the bass ain't so loud? So anyway, we got to go through that whole thing, which is cool. But the interesting thing is the way I kind of approach this album. There's a couple of different ways, but one of the things is, it's always interesting for artists, producers, whatever, to talk shit about other music and say, my music when back in my day and this is like, because ain't nobody, all that. But I really respect a lot of the music, a lot of the trap music, and a lot of the things that came out just in the last, decade or two or whatever. So I always immerse myself in knowing how to do all that shit. So I'm just gonna warn y'all, if you think that I don't know how to do what you do, don't try me, because I can come with you know you name it, you name the genre, and believe me, on my way to get back to where I'm at, I did it. From trap to like reggae to dance hall, you name it. I had fun doing all of it because I love making music, and I'm lucky and blessed that I can play every instrument, and I can play every instrument really, really, really well. Like you know, I, I could play I could play guitar in any band. I could play bass in any band. I could play drum in any band. I could play keyboards in any band. I could play horns in any band. So it's kind of, I've been lucky, because, my father was a musician, so that helped. And then, obviously, you know, um, the friends I grew up around, obviously pretty serious musicians, and they kind of help you, kind of inspire you a little bit to push yourself a little more than maybe you might otherwise do. But yeah, and then I have my family, and I have a family of critics. If you ain't on your stuff, they will let you know. I mean, I would say one of the classic things about what we used to do back in the day, and is how you figure out how you want to whittle your music down and figure out what you're gonna have. Is you play it to the Andersons, you take it down the basement, and everybody will come down and, hey, I want y'all to hear this new stuff, and everybody will come down the basement or upstairs or wherever the setup is, and they'll come, and it'll be full, because I got a big family, so it'll be packed. Everybody will be in there, and you put it on, yeah, and you vibing, and you getting your groove on, you listening to it, and when you turn around, if the room is still full, then you got something. If there's just kids crawling around and kids, picking their nose, eating some chicken wings or something,
That wasn't nothing.
that one you gotta go back to the drawing board. You
That's
gotta stick
funny.
it back in the oven. It has gotta cook a little more. So yeah, no, that's how we used to know.
It's like it sounds like the old Motown stories, like when they talk about Barry Gordy used to have those listening parties, and he said, "You could go buy a sandwich, or would you buy this record?" And he'd be like,
Ah,
I'll go buy the record."
yeah, yeah, oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
this was very, very, because I mean it's like the feeling of turning around and the room is empty. It's like I thought I had, I thought it was, I thought it was hitting on every level, but next thing I knew, days all gone. So yeah, no, it
Like
was
you
good.
said, go back to the oven, cook it some more.
Turn it up.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Air fry that shit.
Exactly. Put some stank on it,
You know?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Catherine is a big asset to
Mhm.
for actually helping you choose those selections. And what I noticed in the tracks, man, your bass is turned like I listened to a lot of it last night on my system, and that bass is like
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what type of basses are you using, and what is your preference on the style of basses that you use to play?
My thing is not, I don't get too hung up on, I know a lot of people get hung up on, this bass and that bass and this guitar
Yeah,
and that guitar. I think if you can play,
yeah,
you're gonna be able to play. It doesn't matter a whole lot. But the one thing that was really cool about the bass, well, for one thing, I play on some of the songs. I play my original bass. One that's on some of the time stuff, the original time stuff. Some was
wow,
on the original Prince stuff. Because my bass is that bass that's on a lot of that stuff, and a lot of people don't know that, but it is what
yeah,
it is. And then, but the other thing was a friend of mine, Ali Leroy. He's a filmmaker. He's also a bass player, and he the Revolution asked me to do the Prince tribute, and I decided and I really hesitated bringing my bass because my bass is it's really kind of I don't ever want anything to happen to it, so I don't really travel with it and all that kind of stuff because it's really kind of and he was like, oh, don't worry about it, you can use my bass. And I said, really? He said, oh yeah, no, go ahead. And so I used it. I wanted to be using it for that show, or for those shows. I think we did a couple of shows, but and then when I came back, he said, why don't you just keep it, man? You look, it looks good on you. And I was like, are you serious? And I said, because I mean, normally, people don't really give me much, you know, so I really appreciated it, and so I brought it back home, and the first thing I wrote on it and recorded was "Show Me Love," you know, and that's that because it just has a grind, it's got a fatness that and so I wanted to play in that on most of the stuff on the album, and I think it's a Geddy Lee. Um,
okay.
yeah, it's a nice bass, a really nice bass.
I love your bass playing on a lot of these tracks, man. It's awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah, I love playing bass.
Yeah,
Bass is really fun for me, and I get a kick out of playing it because it's like for me, it's like drinking water. It's like second nature. It's not even I don't even try hard because it's just sort of part of my who I've always been. Since I was a kid, I've been playing it since what 7 years old, 8 years old, something like that.
yeah, yeah.
So it's just trickery and all the other kind of stuff. I got into fusion for a while, and then I was like flicking and thumping strings and all of that, and I was just having fun and being silly, playing it upside down, behind your back, sideways, and all of that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of photos of we would do shows that me and Prince would work out this whole thing. I said, "Come here, man." I said, "I want you to play this. You could play this." And so we play it, and he'd play the bottom half, and I'd play the top half. And so we just jam like that. And then we wound up doing that. We used to do that back in the day. And then we wound up doing it in some of his shows. And there's a couple pictures where you see it. Probably people don't realize, but we're both playing the same bass. I'm playing the
Got it
bottom, he's
going.
playing the top. Yeah, and it was like, because people would, it would always like, I would love to just see the looks on people's faces. Because they would
Yeah.
just like look like, are they doing what I think they're doing? Because I would just hold one arm up like this, and he'd get around there, and then, I look around like, yeah, that's right. I'm doing this, and I'm wearing clear pants.
Yeah, we gonna talk about them clear pants in a moment, man. I had that on my list of questions, but we gonna get to that too.
Oh no, not clear. No. Hey, I ain't scared.
Yeah, the 80s were bad on a brother back then.
Hey, I was like, you got to do something different sometimes. You got to, to
Yeah,
get people's attention because back then didn't nobody know who Prince was. They didn't know who I was, and And believe it or not, I know, people think, oh, whatever, whatever. But I was always pushing, saying we got to push the envelope. We got to make things happen. We got to do something different. We got to make things. We got to change. And I mean, and if you know Prince, you can put that brother in a headlock, and you might get 2 words, maybe 5 words, maybe. If you got to know him really good, then he. But otherwise, and that doesn't work out so good when you're trying to get things going.
Yeah.
It's great when you got a lot of money and you can hire people and all that, but when you're just getting started, talking like, well, I could play all these instruments. You gotta, yeah, he can play a lot of instruments, okay? And we need to be up, so somebody's got to be that. And in the beginning, it was me and my loud mouth and talking all my trash and being all cocky and all that other kind of stuff. Sometimes it pays off. So yeah.
Yeah, rich history right there, man. And now, and you mentioned something a little bit earlier that I want to touch upon on. Speaking of history, your mother,
Mhm.
what you mentioned earlier that that she had a street actually renamed after her. This was 2 years ago in 2024.
Right.
Um, mom is historic, civil rights activist, also youth engagement in the city. If you don't mind talking a little bit about your mom, sharing a little bit about her history, and and also Prince coming to live with you at an early age under your
Mhm.
mom's roof. If you don't mind talking a little bit about
No, no, no. Well, my mom is a beautiful person.
that. Yeah.
I only laugh only because she's hilarious. She's a beautiful person, inside and out, I really can't say enough about my mom, and really what she brought, to me, to us, to the community, and really what she still represents in the community lives on. I mean, the thing is, if you're really sincere about what you're doing, it lives on. If you're really dedicated to helping others, it lives on. Whether it's for me, helping, Prince or helping whoever else I might help, helping Morris, helping different artists, and my mom helping me, helping Prince, and helping the people in the community. You're kind of paying it forward. A lot of people don't know, I guess, just how much my mom really kind of, you know, played a part in really kind of giving us, the confidence, that we needed to do what we needed to do. I mean, the one thing about me, and I realize this, in retrospect, because a lot of times you don't know stuff, and you don't really think about it much because you're busy living life, and I'm not a big person to go back and reflect on the past. I'm the man of the future. Dwelling on the past is great, but I just think if you that's when you're done and you're retired, and But I'm always trying to do new stuff, so it's hard for me to think about it like that. But because I came back to do this funk thing, and really it brought back a lot of memories going back and thinking about it, and it really made me realize, I mean, a lot of folks that I really grew up with, that really had impact, on my life as a musician, are passed away, and that's kind of it kind of hurts, and so it makes me, well, not kind of hurt, it hurts a lot, and it really leaves an empty space, and you start to reflect on your history, and and I ran into my cousin, right before he passed, and we were talking. And he was talking about different things about me playing the drums and stuff like that. And he said, "How come people don't know you play the drums?" And I was like, it's like, I don't know. It's never really seemed to be a thing. I mean, everybody. I'm not trying to seem like I'm trying to say, "Oh, I play the drums. I can play all the instruments too." I'm not trying to get into that whole thing. And he said, "Yeah, but you played the drums way before all of that." I said, "Yeah, well, that doesn't matter right now because people blah blah blah." And then my brother, who I talked to the other day, he's always saying, I didn't know you could play the piano. I didn't know you could play the guitar. It made me start thinking about it, and I thought about why is it that they say that, and then I realized what it was, because when um when we were growing up in the projects, because we came from the projects, we didn't have no money. That's just, I ain't got no money. You think about all that. That's why all of that stuff
True
is.
story.
Yeah, it's always in the lyrics because we was some broke folks,
Yeah.
but and so I didn't have people that could kick down some money to buy a piano or or a bass or anything like that, or a guitar or anything like that. It just wasn't part of my reality at the time. But because I grew up streetwise, and hustling and all that other kind of stuff, and most of my friends outside of music was hustlers. So I knew how to get my hands on stuff, but I couldn't let my mom know. I couldn't let anybody in my family know that I had, a bass or
Expound.
a guitar or or a tambourine or a horn,
Explain
saxophone,
these
or
things,
trumpet.
right?
Yeah, I couldn't. I liberated them, as I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would see them. They must not have wanted this so bad if they just let it sit here on the stand on the stage like this. You don't want that. That pedal. Oh man, why's he got that pedal sitting there just sitting there? Nobody's watching it. Oh, let me see it. Oh. And then, so I was that guy, but I couldn't let anybody know. So my family didn't know I had this stuff because if they did, my mom would have been, she would have turned me in. She'd have been like, no, you got to take it back. So
Mhm.
I had to be super slick about all of that. And so a lot of times they didn't know that. So I realized that, and because a lot of people would ask me that, and I used to play all the time. I like practice like 10 hours a day back then. And we, me and Prince used to go at it. So, and you couldn't. I mean, we were very, very competitive on every level. So, so it was, I don't care what it was. It was tennis. We'd go at it, and we'd be like, literally, we'd have cars parked with lights on. Let's run it again. And yeah, it was. There's a reality to when some people say they was best friends and all that kind of stuff. Some people actually
True,
lived a
brother.
life of going through crazy ups and downs, and I mean, just really trying to figure out who you are as a person. We went through all that, and he, really, I mean, I have to give him a lot of credit, because if it weren't for Prince, really, and all joking, kidding aside, I probably would have been, I'd probably be in prison or, somewhere because I was headed in an interesting, direction. But, I'd also say, if it weren't for my family, really, all of us, because, my sister made the clothes, Sylvia,
Yeah.
she made a lot of and my other sister, Trisha, was, she was a model, and she was like in all kinds of modeling agencies and ads. And, her photographer is, the guy who did, a lot of the Purple Rain shots and a lot of the original album cover stuff. So my family really kind of brought in, a lot of, the colorful aspects. And my brother Eddie, I mean, Prince thanks him on the Tabitha Smiley thing because Eddie's, they call him the critic, but, he's more than that. He's just somebody who really, you know, um, he used to be a singer. He was in a group. He just, always had one foot, in singing and another foot in a bunch of other stuff. Because my brothers, for lack of a better word, they were very colorful, very into some crazy stuff that helped, kind of shade. Let's put it that way. Some of our overtones and definitely my edge because they were nobody to mess around with. I never had to worry about anything because if anybody even thought about saying anything funny about me or my family or anybody associated with my family, all they had to do was just say, "But that's Sonny Anderson's brother." And in fact, you look a little bit like my brother. Yeah. I
Really?
mean, oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Sonny was, yeah, he was nobody to play around with.
Yeah. 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 That history is, man, that's amazing to hear, knowing your mom's history and then hearing how you talk about your brothers and the world around you at that time. And then, then you and Prince, developing and honing your skills early in those days. Do you remember like very, very early in those days? Like I can remember being like a preteen and a teenager, like sitting with my friends and like you guys in the 80s, like when you guys' albums, Andre Cymone albums would come out, Jesse Johnson albums would come out, Prince albums would come out, Time albums. I would, if a certain friend didn't have those albums, I would take the album to a friend's house or bring them. We would sit and listen to these albums, and I would turn a lot of people onto these albums as a kid.
Mm.
Do you remember those times with Prince, like being young and you guys just, learning albums, or you turning him on to music that he didn't know about, or vice versa? Was there any of that going on at that time?
Are you kidding me? That was like a big, first of all, we were a
Yeah,
band. So, so we had to learn stuff to play, all that
yeah,
kind but, it was always a thing. there's so many, there's so much of that went on, and, I have to say to a certain degree, um, he would, because he would, his dad would fork up a little bit of cash, and so he would have a little bit more money. I didn't have no money, so but what I did have was, like I said, a big family. So my family had every kind of record you could think of.
yeah,
The record collection in the Anderson house was just epic. Because everybody was into something different.
yeah,
That's the beauty. And so so when I would play stuff, I would go back, to stuff like I'd go back to Lou Rawls, like early Lou Rawls. I don't, it's like back when he was like doing that serious big band type. I love stuff like that, and I learned all that stuff on the bass, and I eventually learned the horn parts on the bass and everything on the bass. Because I used to love that stuff. And even like Scott, there's just when I was 17, all that stuff. All of that stuff. I would I would bring all of those elements, and then Bobby Hebb and different, um, you know, things that my brothers and Gary U.S. Bond and obviously, and then my sister was in all that calypso stuff, and and then Motown stuff. They were in all of that, So I didn't really have to buy any records because they
yeah,
were all there. And then my brother was a hustler, so anything that I could think of that I need, it'd be sitting by my bed. He's like, oh, you might want to hear, you might want to listen to this. And so, I'd be like, oh shit, Stevie Wonder, and
yeah.
so it was just, I was just blessed to have, really an amazing family that were into so much different stuff, and yeah, so yeah, we definitely experienced that. And all of us, even, William was really, our percussionist also was really kind of into some different stuff. So,
Very cool. For you personally, all of your years of listening to music and your personal favorites, if you can pick 5 albums in your lifetime that you would tell somebody, these are my 5 favorite albums. I suggest you listen to these albums, and you like these albums pretty much from beginning to end. What are your picks on those 5 albums? No matter what the genre is, the artist, just 5 that you absolutely love albums.
well, Stevie, let's see, probably the first three would be Stevie. um, I like, obviously, Talking Book, Songs in the Key of
Mm,
Life, Fulfilling His First Finale. Um, God,
heavy albums.
yeah, yeah, it's, Hotter Than July. I guess, I like Joni Mitchell, Hajira, Quincy
Mm,
Jones, Smackwater Jack. Um, I like Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. Um, let's see. God, I know I'm, because I just used to, the Isley Brothers, just pick any, all of their shit stuff. All of it, you know, um, Sly, obviously. But I guess, my favorite, it's just hard to say. There's so much
yeah,
stuff I like. Um, just albums that I put on. I Want You is one of my favorite albums of all time. I can always put that on and just
love
like
that album.
get lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Shoot. Yeah, there's just so much. I'm just, obviously I love music. I love, like I said, Lou Rawls, he's got an album called Soul, and that's one of my favorite albums. If you're not hip to that, put that on and get lost in the time warp kind of thing, because that's really good. Frank Sinatra when the one that Quincy produced, which I didn't know that for a
Yeah,
long time. I loved it, and then I found out Quincy produced it. I was like, what?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, obviously, you know, I got into some really kind of, futuristic stuff, and so I like a lot of craft work. I like the rhythmics. Obviously, Prince's stuff is amazing to me. Love what some of the things that he did.
Yeah.
Um, it's just there's so much out there that I'm trying to think of. Then I got into some hip hop stuff, which I love. I love Public Enemy. Um, you know, um, yeah, I mean, it's just I could go on and on, really.
Never ending list.
Yeah, I mean, it really, because if you once you, the thing about Public Enemy when I first, because I got into rap before anybody that my contemporaries were still kicking and scratching, and I was like, oh no no, but because I think I'm trying to think which tour it was, but Dougie Fresh, and Slick Rick opened, and so and I would hang out with those guys, and they were doing some parties that were separate from the gig. So they do some school parties and stuff like that. So I wound up going to a couple of those, and I
Yeah.
was like, wait a minute, I don't think y'all understand what's about to jump off here, because they were doing something altogether different. And once I started understanding the art of hip hop, and what made me understand that was Public Enemy, because people would at the time would say that it wasn't really art, it wasn't really music, and it wasn't really this, and they were, kind of trying to, poke holes and take shots at it and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I mean, because Fight the Power is a work of art. Period. I don't care. You can say whatever you want. You can be the dopest musician, blah 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 blah. But to put that together the way they did and the whole package is it's a statement. And to me it's the pinnacle of the art of hip hop. And not to mention, lyrically coming, just hitting as hard as you get and making that statement that people needed to hear at the time. And and so I mean I'm a fan of all genres of music,
Yeah.
but I just obviously underneath it all is funk.
Yeah.
Underneath that, the loops that they were pulling from Clinton to Slide or whoever else they pulled stuff from, because they had little bits, and I mean it's just I actually listened to that, and it's interesting because I tried to do some stuff like that. I think it was for either Lionel or Philip Bailey at the time, and they were like, "You trying to make me hip hop?" like, and so I think they wound up going with Babyface in L.A. or whatever. But because I was like, I'm always trying to think about, you know, what's next. Yeah, because it's like, you got to keep your ear to the streets. That's why I'm saying, I'm you know, um, always keeping my ear to the street, my finger on the pulse of what's going on, and I just, and it's like I like to create different stuff. Like I may do a trap kind of, I got stuff like that. Like there's a couple of songs that I got that people would just freak the f out if they heard them because they're done. So I can push play on them right now. So it's like it ain't like I'm just going. Oh, I wish I had it. I'm gonna do it when. No, I got it right now, and I can push play. And trust me, you're gonna be like, ooh, and yeah. So
I heard that, man. That's actually one of the many things, growing up, along with Prince, and Sly, Stevie,
mhm.
and George, yourself, Jesse, all you cats, man. Why I love you guys so much is like each and every album is not like the last.
Mhm.
Basically, there's
Yeah,
always something. It's going to reach back a little bit, but you're going to get something that's not quite heard just yet. It's like, okay,
yeah,
what is that?
yeah.
And that's one of the things I remember, growing up, and what attracted me to your sound. Once you went to your solo deal, and
Mhm.
you started doing the living in the new wave and the surviving in
Mhm.
the '80s. It was just like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this stuff? So I want to get into that a little bit because the technology, we're talking 1981, 82, 83, and then
Mhm.
you mentioned craft work and a lot of that electro pop, synth sound, whatever the critics wanted to dub it at that time. You were actually tinkering on that and with those sounds on those projects.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the technology you were using and some of those some of the equipment that you were using around that time to make those albums.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I had, there's a brother that was, really tight with named Clayton Hughes. And he would help me really kind of hone in on finding the gear because he was kind of a very technical, musical technical. And he had a lot of friends, Ramel. I mean, Ramel was really cool and really kind of deep into, you know, um, some just, creative stuff, but I really wanted to come up with a vibe because once I told him what I wanted to do, because I was originally going to come up, my first album was going to be hardcore funk. And I should have kept it closer to the vest because I told the wrong people. And the next thing I knew, the time came out before I came up with what I was talking about doing. I had the zoot suits and the whole thing. I had it all figured out. But it's all good. Everything happens for a reason. So I thought, I'm just going to do something different. So I'm just going to rewrite the whole game. So I just came up with this concept of futuristic music. Like don't let the future come down on you, or what was it? There's a what are we doing here? It's like it's just so different. It's just it's a combination of funk, pop, electronic. It's like this
Yeah.
fusion of different stuff. And the crazy thing is that, I was one of the first black artists to be playing on MTV, when they weren't playing a lot of black artists because they were like, it's so different, it's so eclectic that, the video was like, really different, really weird. And, so I just was trying to do something different, because I could, I mean, I could have done all kind of other stuff, but I just thought, what, we're creating. I didn't realize it. Those guys were on some, TV show and said we don't like new wave, and I was on the record, and so it made it a little bit more difficult because people felt like they had to choose between, you know, me doing new wave and them doing funk or whatever, which was I was a little bit, kind of pissed off about that at the time, but I got over it because it is what it is, But I mean that's one of the things I always appreciate about hip hop because they always look out for each other. They always kind of you know lifted each other up, and it seemed like from my perspective, those guys were trying to create these camps or something within our own sort of family, which was a little bit weird for me. But you know what? I'm like, whatever. To each his reaching. If I can't cop it, ain't mine to have. George
Yes, I heard
Clinton.
that. I know
So
that's
yeah.
right.
So but yeah, no, it was fun to create that. And then the keyboard that I had at the time that got me into so much trouble was called a PPG Wave. I had a Prophet because I knew George used a Prophet, or at least I thought he did. So I thought, a Prophet's gonna get me some funk, and then this PPG Wave, nobody had it, nobody heard it. It was just this weird keyboard. The only person that had it was Stevie, Thomas Dolby, and me in America. So, and it had this whole, you could run your lighting show with this thing because it could do sequencing before sequencing was even a thing,
Wow.
you know. So it could do all of this stuff. So I had learned how to do it and, program stuff and all that other kind of stuff. It was very futuristic. So I wound up, working on that and making that. And I really kind of went too far with it, because my record company was like, okay, this is too far. Because I had gotten to the point where like I had created these beats with rhythms of sounds. So I had like then I put like I mean, I would just get into this thing, and then
Yeah.
and it was funky, but
Hmm.
it was electronic. and I'd play it, and it was fat. So it'd be I'd go to the record company all happy, push, be bumping, and they'd be like, I love it, but I don't know how we can market this. There's nothing out like this at all. And, we need to, can't you just do something like this? And then they'd cut out the top 10 and Luther was at the top. And I'm thinking, I mean, I could, but, I mean, what about this though? So anyway, it got into a thing. And at a certain point, I was like, it came down to, just art versus capitulation. And I'm kind of hard headed, because I'm like,
Most artists are, in a sense.
yeah, I'm like, wait a minute now, who's the Picasso here? You or me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
right.
Let me paint my picture.
Mhm.
I think she should have a necklace on, So anyway, yeah, so it got into all of that, and at some point, I just said, I'll just produce, and so, you know, um, I started producing Evelyn Champagne, King, Jody Watley, the girls, just yeah, started doing some other stuff, And the crazy thing is, I was like, oh, this is like you can still make money, and you don't have to be on the hook for all the different payback, kickbacks, and all the the snags that they get you hooked up in. So it wound up being you know fun for a while. But even then, it's still you know it's always it's never quite what you think, because you think you know people appreciate what you're trying to bring to their thing, and even though it's successful, people very often have issues with your just the fact that how dare you
Yeah.
how dare you how dare you hook me up with this stuff. That's number one. I don't know. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just trying to do what I can do to help the world
Yeah, I
dance
heard
and have
that.
fun.
Yeah. This goes to show sometimes you're just too far ahead of your time, man. It just-
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, just like I said, just reaching back to those albums, they still have that futuristic sound to them. I still like even now in 2026. I was listening to Surviving the Age the other day, and it still has that really kind of, oh man, this is just far out. I feel like I'm in a machine or something.
Yeah. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it out.
Yeah, yeah. Still, how did you initially secure your deal with Columbia Records? How did that signing come to be? He laughed.
Well, yeah, because I called and said I'm Andre Cymone, and I asked you should give me a record deal. Basically,
Simple as that,
pretty much. And they laughed at me and laughed, like it was a joke. And because that's how I'm a very, I'm kind of no nonsense. I'm just like, look, I'm always confident in what I do because I like to think that I'm really good at what I do.
huh? Yeah.
So, so, so I did. I literally called him up and I said, I might even looked it in the phone book. I probably looked it up. It was like, okay, Columbia Records. Because I had, looked at all the different record labels and they had the artists that I thought were the artists that I liked that I thought, they could probably really kind of get with something like this, somebody
Mm,
like me. So I called them up and they thought it was a joke. They said, well, you know what? Um, have your representation, have your representative, send me, a demo and, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay. And so I had to find some representation and happened to know Owen Husney. So I called him up and said, hey, listen, there's this situation. So the rest is history.
yeah. Shout out to Owen Husney, man. That's another Minneapolis legend. Also assisted with signing of Prince and many other legends too as well, man. Shout out to him.
Hmm.
Yeah. I also want to reach back, man, too, because we just recently lost another legend. Speaking of Owen, but we recently lost another legend who is also part of Minneapolis history. And you've worked hand in hand with creating some magnificent projects
Hmm.
with Mr. David Z. I want to put some respect on his name. If you don't mind telling my audience a little bit about David Z and you and his history together, making that beautiful music with these artists.
Yeah. God, where do I start? Yeah, David's he was a very very influential part of the sound of Minneapolis. Just because he was a very let's see, how do I say? He was a very sound conscious engineer. He was very, dedicated to, really tones and sounds and how they work together. And I think he brought that kind of magic to the things we were trying to do early on, and then obviously with my stuff, that I did. And so he was an integral part, and he's, things definitely would have sounded very different without David being involved, and he's definitely sorely missed, because he was definitely a pioneer of a lot of the things that he was doing, keying drum machines to keyboards and different things that he did, and keying other instruments, vocals to different patterns. He had a technique, and he also had a sense of humor, and that goes a long way when you're spending hours in the studio. You need somebody that's just not like watching paint dry. You want somebody that's kind of bringing some flavor to the experience, and he definitely did that. So he was a good dude, really good dude, and fun to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, David Z, man. We got to give a shout out to David Z, the Minneapolis legend. Absolutely. You mentioned some of those projects you worked on a little bit earlier after your solo deal.
Hmm.
Definitely want to dive a little bit into those, especially the girls, man. That one album and gone, but a great group, great album. Those girls can sing.
They can sing. They can sing.
What
They're
do
very
you, yeah, well, how did you find them and producing that whole project? How did that connect?
Yeah, that was my brother's thing. He brought he had the idea and the concept. And yeah, and I was just happy to help him, put it together and help him get a record deal and but it was his thing, and whatever he wanted to do with it was whatever he wanted to do with it. And if he wanted me involved, I was there. So,
Yeah,
it was a fun project, because they were kind of groundbreaking. They were doing a lot of stuff. When you listen to that album, you hear a lot of influences that came after that album on
yeah,
some people. I'm not going to name no names, but a lot of people, took some pages out of that, that kind of funk, because it was very Minneapolis, very synth oriented, and it was before a lot of other groups came out and were trying to do that same type of thing. So very special album for me. I love that album.
yeah. Absolutely, great album. You guys need to go find that Girl Talk, man. It's a great album. It's like unsung. You got to get it. Got to
Yeah.
get it. And then you worked with the most wonderful, most beautiful Jody Watley,
Hmm.
actually kickstarting her solo career. Actually, for the first four albums, man, you guys had a collaboration just gold, man. And you caught her just coming straight out of Shalimar. How did you guys connect? Did she pick you, or how did you guys find each other to start collaborating?
I think she heard "Teenager" that I did with Evelyn Champion.
Ah,
Yeah, and it was because it was such a different kind of a record. It was like funk, but had a rock edge, and so she was the people that did my the Dance Electric video were she was, I think they were managing her. The Bill Parker, his wife, I think it was his wife, I'm not sure, but she was managing Carolyn Ali. She was managing Jody, I believe, at the time, and yeah, and Jody happened to be there when I went in for a meeting, and so we just she said she was doing what she was doing, and and said, hey, we should get together, and we wound up getting together, and the rest is history, as they say. Because she had a lot of ideas, and and my thing really was just helping her kind of find what she wanted to do. And I kind of let her, kind of, help me understand what she wanted to try to achieve. Because she had a lot of ideas herself, and and that's why I really didn't want to do, because I know a lot of people, they create, this a sound for somebody, and then they create it for somebody else, and they create it for somebody else, and then everybody basically sounds the same. I didn't want to do that. I just, I wanted to work with the artist and let the artist tell me what they want to do. Because if you're, I think that's what a good producer does. You kind of follow the artist lead. They're the ones who have to go out on stage and play it and sing it and do all that kind of stuff. So I did that with Jody, and it really is kind of, her vibe, her vision, and I just brought the phone, brought the music. So yeah.
But there was never any Jody and Andre duet. And I know you guys did a lot of songwriting together, but there was never a duet anywhere. I know it's
We
something in the
did.
vault somewhere.
Yeah, there's one in the vault. Yeah.
Oh man,
It's
really?
yeah, it's funny you should say that because yeah, I had kind of forgotten about that song
Oh man.
because I always wanted to do because I did a whole album. Did a whole solo album that never came out, and it was
Mm,
supposed to be on another label, and so and I did it all, and it happened at a time where you know uh, the record label was going through this transformation, and I just wasn't patient. They kept trying to get me to do these different things, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. I said, never mind. So I was just, but it's, one of these days I have to put that record out because that record is, it's a
wow.
lot of different things. It's funky. It's like, it was like coming back, you know, it's a hybrid of a lot of different things because all the success of Jody, all the success of Adam Ant and Tina Turner and James Ingram and all the different things I had done at the time. Um, it was kind of right around that whole time period. So I had developed a whole nother kind of sound, and so that album was full of that kind of stuff. And I just
Yeah, man.
yeah, and I finished it. I did the whole album, even did some photo album cover stuff, and
Wow.
I just wound up never. I just said no. I just don't want to do this,
Wow.
And that's
Interesting.
really kind of when I stepped away for a while.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned those artists, and I love the fact that you mentioned those artists because as a producer, and also being a producer myself, just just loving the listening and loving at the same time your growth and change in the sound from when you started as a solo artist
Mhm.
and then developed the sound for the girls when you did the sound for Jody Watley and then Tom Jones, and then we get to Manners and Physique, what you did with Adam and your production started to have like this really really big sound, and I love that. It just like you said, it just totally changed.
Right.
Uh, Adam Ant, probably one of the most unique and different comparisons with you and him. How did you guys end up connecting?
We had the same manager, and yeah, my manager had asked me. I guess they had talked and asked me if I was interested in doing a couple of songs on his record, and I was like, I was a big fan. I was like, oh man, heck yeah! So I'm down. So we wound up going to Hugo's, and we had lunch, and he was kind of telling me what he wanted to do, and I thought, and as he was talking, and kind of giving me his perspective, the whole concepts were coming to me. Just ideas, music ideas, and just I mean, and before we left for lunch, I had just a bundle of ideas. So I went back to my studio and came up with some songs for him, and then we wound up becoming really really good friends. And I wound up doing the whole album.
Yeah,
Yeah, so but we got to be really good friends. He's like hilarious. The sessions were amazing. We had so much fun. Him and Marco. Marco was his guitar player, and I mean we just had a blast. That we wound up mixing it at this other studio where the Gap Band was at. And we had a whole thing with them that was we kind of all collected and had fun. But it was fun. That was a fun project. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It definitely shows in the album, man. So it's a fun album. I love it a lot, man. And it's ironic because Adam Ant starting off with Adam and the Ants back in the late '70s and '80s. He was really into the punk new wave thing, and then you were living in the new wave, and then you guys kind of come together late in the decade and create something that's not new wave,
Yeah, exactly.
a totally
Yeah.
different sound,
Something totally
slamming,
different.
but it ain't new
Yeah,
wave.
yeah. It was again, it was a whole different thing. I mean, because it was
Hmm.
like I wanted to do, the two drummers like he did, and I had live drummers all hooked up. He didn't want to do that. He just wanted to do what I did, and interesting thing was I think him and Michael Jackson were friends. And
Okay.
I think Michael had told him a little bit about me, and which was which I found it strange when he had told me that. I was like, Michael said Andre's like a Duke Ellington of funk or something like that. It's some kind of he'd said it. I remember reading it in a magazine somewhere. And it was just interesting. I just thought, well, and so I always wanted to become friends with Michael, and just work with him at some point. It came really close a couple of times.
Wow.
But
Wow.
but that would have been fun. I would have loved to work with him because
Yeah, I can imagine what that would have sounded like. Yeah.
we would have a blast. Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting to find out also you did some work with another gentleman who has a beautiful voice, man. And I'm going to assume that this connection did happen through Jody because he was close with Jody, Mr. Jermaine Stewart.
Hmm.
Yeah, you did some tracks with him, man. Talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the history about Jermaine Stewart, a definite unsung vocalist, man. I can imagine he was a lot of fun to work with.
He was a lot of fun to work with. He's always on. He's always on 15. Yeah, a lot of fun. Really, it did come through Jody. And again, he was managed by same person that was managing Jody and myself.
Mm,
So yeah, that's kind of how that came about. And he was always around, when I was doing Jody stuff and when I was doing stuff for different people. He was just always around. So I would call him and have him come and sing things, and so yeah, he was just a really fun brother to have around because he brought energy and spirit. And when you're
yeah,
creating stuff, it's good to have people around that kind of bring that. You know,
yeah.
yeah.
And then after you took your break, after doing all those great albums for all those great artists,
Mhm.
um, you seemed to kind of disappeared for a little while, but then you resurfaced back. You came back at a very, very interesting time, man, when the world was really going through tumultuous tragedy, things like that. You've put out a series of singles throughout the last decade, Trayvon, America, American Dream,
Mhm.
a lot of singles. What made you come back and what triggered? I know, the messages are there in the songs, but what made you come back and say, okay, now I gotta go ahead and speak my heart and speak my soul and share this with the world?
Well, in my opinion, music is powerful. You
Mm,
know, and it speaks to the imagination of in people. It speaks to the soul of who we are. It speaks to the culture. It speaks to on so many levels. And I just didn't see that happening with artists. Artists weren't really kind of speaking to these issues. We had our first black president. You know, and he was coming up for reelection, and it's really America was and so I was like, people got to get out and vote. And
yeah,
where's all these artists that are, how come y'all ain't, and I would reach out to folks, man, y'all got platforms. I know people think I'm weird or whatever and doing this just weird new wave music type stuff, and so they think I'm just, but but y'all got these platforms that I'd love to have, because if I did, I'd be using it
right,
for
right,
times like this, because we really need to realize that there's some things that are bigger than what we're trying to do, personally. And and I think making sure we have the right people running this country is one of the most important things,
right.
because that has a lot to do with our future collectively, so you don't walk up on people and people aren't recoiling because they think somehow you're going to eat their dog or their cat or something crazy like that. I mean, the idea of that, I mean, that's crazy, because I find that people, look at me now, where they didn't before. They look at me like now, like, oh no, because people have been told that, oh, those scary people, they're going to do this and and it's like, so we got to speak on that. Artists, people who have a platform need to let people know that, people are people. The humans, we're all in this thing together. That's the way it's going to be. So we're only as good as our neighbor. We're only as good as our community. We're only as good as our country or the country next to us. So, I mean, people need to understand that either sooner or later, otherwise you're going to wind up, in a situation that's going to be a whole lot more difficult to get back
Yeah,
to come back from. So yeah.
yeah. How are you feeling these days about the times we're living in, and what we're dealing with, as a community and as people of the earth?
Well, I think again, I think people need to open up and wake up to what's really going on. I think people need to. I think people suffer from a lack of imagination because people think that things are on the surface. You know,
Hmm.
what they're seeing is what it is. There's so many things going on beneath the surface that people need to pay a lot more attention to than what they're paying attention to. Because I think there's beneath the surface, there's a whole movement. When you start thinking about people trying to build all these, these private prison camps, huge private prison camps all around the country, you got to ask yourself, why are they doing this? And then they're scaring people and trying to make people think that, certain folks, they slap names on them like Haitian or, Somalian or whatever, but, to black folks that don't know the difference, all black folks are the same. Not that it should matter, because
Hmm.
it shouldn't. Because nobody, I don't care what color or nationality or culture you are, should be demonized. Definitely not by your government. So it's just I just think people suffer from a lack of imagination and not understanding what could be lying underneath, all of this, you know, lying about elections and all this other kind of stuff. And so people need to get out and vote,
Yeah,
because they need to get out and vote in mass to send a message that no, we're not going to let this, lying about things that we know happen, and allowing, people to be bought and paid and compromised, and somehow that becomes the norm. No, we have to stand up for that. And so that's, the music that I used to sing about back then, and really, people need to really kind of, so my thing about where things are at right now is we're in a bad place. And the
yeah,
only way we're going to get out of it is if people wake up and realize we have to use our vote, and we have to use our voice, and we have to collectively understand that there's an assault on our future. And if we don't stand up for it, I mean, play out, people talk about AI. Oh, AI, AI. I mean, AI is ripping people off. If I did what AI is doing, I'd be underneath the jail because it's plagiarism. It's stealing your intellectual property. It's stealing your music. It's stealing your sound. It's stealing your voice. But it's AI. So somehow or another, somebody's got you thinking it's okay because it's
yeah,
this new thing. No, it's not okay. It's stealing.
yeah. It ain't nobody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you play it out to its likely conclusion, guess what? A lot of people are going to be out of work. So while you're pushing, saying, oh, but AI, in about 5, 10 years, not even going to be that long,
Yeah,
you're gonna be out of work. You're going to be, and so all those private prisons that they're building, it might be for you because you're going to be desperate because you're going to be out of work. You're going to be trying to figure out how I can feed my family because my job has been taken by artificial intelligent, sources. And the next thing the only thing I can do is go hustle up over here or go gaffle something over there or whatever. Unless you want that to happen, you know, you might want to think about it, play it out, think about, look 10 years ahead at what AI is going to be able to do and decide if you still want to support it. So
right,
yeah,
right.
that's my attitude.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, while that's happening, gas is going up, groceries are going up, rent's going up, the cost of
Yeah.
living is going up. All while that's happening, just yeah,
Well,
just
yeah,
keeping us.
that's a
Yeah,
whole nother thing. That's, the power of distraction because, people will distract you to get you not to pay attention to the thing that you should be paying attention to, like the fact that maybe somebody's a criminal and they don't want you to know
Absolutely.
about that. So they'll distract you with all this other stuff. They'll get you looking up while shit goes down. It's in the song. Your revolution's on your internet. That's what that's
Hmm.
all about. Because they'll do it if they can get away with it. But
Yeah,
the thing is, we can't let them get away with it. We got to keep holding them accountable, and we got to
yeah,
stay. We got to keep our eyes focused.
yeah, man, absolutely. You made a couple of albums, 1969 and The Stone, during that decade, man. Those two albums, man, to me are perfect companions because of because of the sound and
Mhm.
the mix of the albums. So they're almost like a volume one, volume two in my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah,
I kind of look at them as that way. If
yeah.
you don't mind talking about the recording process, and because, like I said, it's a very acoustic, very live sound on both of those albums, and a very, very hard edge on those two recordings too, as well.
hmm Yeah, I had my engineer was really my best friend, Joel Soifer. He passed away in 2017, I believe.
Um, my
But
condolences.
but yeah, he recorded those records, and both of those records are live band. Just we got in the studio and did it the old-fashioned way. Just I wrote the songs, and I got my guys, and we went in the studio, and you know um, they learned the tracks. We jammed on them, and we ran through them several times and really got them tight, and then push record, you know, and recorded them live. And that's how they used to do it back in the day. And I wanted to go back to old school recording for those records, and that's why they sound like you
Yeah,
said, volume one and volume two, because that's pretty much what they were.
yeah, yeah. Some great material on there, man. I want my
Thank
audience
you.
to go back and revisit those albums, man. Black Lives Matter, Black, Man in America.
Yeah,
Some money, great stuff on there, man.
yeah, yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
record.
absolutely. So we got some dates or anything coming up for LA for the new promotion for the Resurrector of Funk?
We're working on that right now.
All
We're,
right, all
we're
right.
literally working on that. We have record release is August 14th. It's Friday.
This
So we're gonna
Friday, by the time
yeah,
this episode airs, it should be out.
we're gonna have a party. Yeah, it's just that's what's going on. It's time for time for the resurrection of funk. And you talk
Yes.
about volume one and volume two. We're gonna keep getting funky. We might even expand it to a volume three and volume four, because people love funk. Because funk makes people happy. Funk gives people a good, joyful, you know, feeling, and that's what it should be all about. We need
Absolutely,
to
and
back
and
it
you
up.
do it so well, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
You do it so well, man. You definitely bring it hard, man. You've always inspired me, but listening to this project just inspired me just even more. I'm like, oh man, this is too cold.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I'm digging it, and I have no doubt, man. Everybody's gonna dig it, and it's been the buzz, of course, within our circle for the last several years. When is Drake coming out with that album, man? When is Drake coming out with that album?
Here it comes, Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
yeah,
so it's here, and trust me, it's not disappointing, and I know it's going to do very, very well. It's going to be on Bandcamp as well as all of his other material on there as well. So go back and definitely reach back into his catalog and support this new album, The Resurrection of Funk. It's a definite banger from beginning to end. So just jump on that, y'all. Jump on it. We're gonna send Boombox Dre to your house, to your neighborhood to come get
there
your
you
ass.
go. I'll be outside with that boombox.
What you know about funk?
What you know about funk? Yeah.
Well, my brother Dre, man, it's been a complete honor. I'm so thankful that you we able to go ahead and get this out the way and get our people, a little bit of funk here, some funk talk, Minneapolis talk, and dive a little bit, into the history of Andre Cymone. And we look forward to hearing the new project and supporting it. And if you don't not mind, let my listeners or people, my viewers, know where they can find you. If you have an Instagram, Facebook, and then also to find the material as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Andre Cymone at bandcamp.com. Um, I think that's where you can find the album and me, and then obviously andrecymone.com is you can find the website, and yeah, Instagram is easy to find. It's the same thing, Andre Cymone. You know, Instagram. I'm on all of those platforms.
Andre
Yeah, just
Cymone.
go on. Yeah, and I really want to get my YouTube channel really kind of jumping off, because I'm going to start doing some different things on there and really kind of holding conversations and forums and talking about different things and different perspectives about, music, politics, different things. Just open things up and allowing artists, finding other artists, and helping other artists get their,
Yeah,
find their voice. And I really want to really help folks, in other communities and musical experiences, you know, um, see the light as much as I can, bring light to what they're doing. Because a lot of people are doing some really cool stuff.
yeah,
And so you want the resurrection of funk, you gotta, like I say, you gotta create platforms and help people because it ain't just about me. One of the things I'm not as a selfish person. So
yeah.
I like to open it up to help others to, help this funk stay alive. So yeah, absolutely. I
During these,
appreciate you.
yeah, during these times, man, that would be much needed and a beautiful thing, man. So
Yeah,
definitely, I would look forward to that if that ever happens.
definitely.
Yeah,
All right.
and I thank you as well, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for just being a true brother and also just being a great inspiration to me and many of my musician friends and everything as well. So we're very, very excited about this project, and I'm proud to be a part of the process of helping to promote it and you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Definitely. All
thanks so
right.
much. And I want to give a special thanks also to Miss Catherine Copeland Anderson. I love that name, man. It sounds so regal.
It
Want to give a
is.
special thanks to her as well for assisting in getting this set up. And thank you guys so much, ladies and gentlemen. The Minneapolis legend, Mr. Andre Cymone. See him soon. The
Thank you.
Resurrection of Funk on
All right.
Bandcamp. Get it now.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, brother. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we were able to finally get this done.